Okay, so my name's Matt Parker, and this is Jenny Young, and we're from the ECITB, which is the Engineering Construction Industry Training Board, hence calling it ECITB. We're here to talk to you today about the engineering construction industry, why that's so important on a day-to-day basis for every single one of us, and why it's going to be important for net zero. By the time we finish, we hope that we've shed some light on one of the world's leading industries and the career opportunities it can offer. So, if I can... Next one, please. Okay, so we are the Engineering Construction Industry Training Board. Okay, that means we are the skills, standards and qualifications body for the development of engineering construction in the UK. What does this mean? Okay, it means that we work with central government, employers, training providers and educational bodies to attract, develop and qualify the people that work in the engineering sectors across a wide range of disciplines and career paths. So, in short, we're here to make sure that the UK has the right number of people doing the right things in the right places in incredibly important jobs. It sounds simple, but engineering construction workers have very specific and highly skilled jobs. An example, some of our people may need to use drones in operational sites such as Hinkley Point C in Somerset, which is a nuclear development which is providing tens of thousands of jobs to the local economy. And it's going to be incredibly important to the UK in terms of power provision over the next few years. So our people need to be the best in terms of technical skills and training in order to do their job safely and better than anyone else. So engineering construction is actually a really interesting industry. And unfortunately, I can't get the video to work because there's no sound. But it's a big deal. We actually cover a number of diverse sectors, all of them quite unique and some of them quite surprising. The first one, if you can flick across, is oil and gas. Okay, so up here. So oil and gas is still very, very important to us, despite its negative press. Okay, it goes from manufacturing materials to make smartphones and tablets to keeping your houses warm. This industry is the one taking the first vital steps towards supporting the energy transition to a lower carbon future. This is a huge piece of work that will take time, effort, and most importantly, people. Pharmaceuticals, up there in the corner. Okay, they produce the vital drugs and medicines for the UK and international pharmaceutical sector. The last few years of lockdowns, social distancing and face coverings shows us just how important the supply and manufacture of drugs really is. Renewable energy, which produces energy using the Earth's natural resources like wind, solar power, waves and biomass. I touched briefly on the work being done by oil and gas towards net zero in the energy transition, and it's the renewable energy sector that will offer us clean, affordable and increasingly reliable alternatives. Chemical sector, which is here. Okay, this is a highly diverse sector which impacts on almost every aspect of our day-to-day lives. A good and growing example is the 3D printing market in the UK, which wouldn't be possible without our chemical engineers. Food and drink, there at the bottom. Food and drink is the biggest manufacturing industry in the UK. It's larger than both the automotive and aerospace industries combined. Examples of this sector's produce ranges from biscuits to meat-free protein sources to beer. Then we move on to power, actual power generation. Okay, these are the power stations and structures that provide us with the electricity we use every minute of every day. Nuclear. Nuclear currently provides 20% of the UK's power. Okay, it's a reliable and low carbon energy source that we're going to see grow in the next few years. And then last but not least is water. Okay, and this sector provides drinking water and wastewater services, including sewage treatment to your homes, to our cities and villages. As a general rule of thumb, a person can survive without water for about 3 days, give or take. Okay, so from this very brief and very basic explanation, I think we can start to see just how intrinsic these industry sectors are to us on a daily basis and how pivotal most of them are going to be on the journey towards net zero. I'm going to hand over to Jenny now, who's going to give you a bit more detail.
Hi, good morning. So Matt's described a lot of the sectors that are concerned with engineering construction, but what does that mean in terms of careers and apprenticeships? No, you go back a minute. So if you think each of these environments is a processing setting, it's something where a material or a substance is transformed and processed into something else. And in order to do that, you need a lot of processing equipment within those facilities. So that might be pipework, pressure vessels, instrumentation, data systems that control and track what's going on. And somebody has to design all those facilities, install all those facilities, and then repair and maintain them through their life, and eventually decommission them when they get to their end of life. And that's, each one of those is a different type of engineering role that sits within engineering construction. So a lot of these sectors are things that we take for granted in our everyday lives. You know, they're intrinsic parts of our day-to-day being. But without engineering construction as a sector, none of these would exist. So it's really, you know, it's key, it's always going to be there. And it's a really important, if slightly invisible, part of the UK economy. Next one. So to give you an idea of the sort of roles that might be involved then, the sort of disciplines that you might look at for an apprenticeship, for example, in engineering construction, I talked around, you know, design, installation, repair and maintenance. The sort of roles that translates into is, in the first instance, you'll have sort of design and drafting positions. The people who actually say, you know, take a chemical refinery, they have to think what are the processes involved in that refinery? How do they need to be set out? What capacities do they need to be capable of handling? All that equipment then has to be procured and installed. So you have people who are looking at how that project is going to be managed, how that project is going to be costed, and these are all particular disciplines. So when you get that equipment onto site, you've then got the sort of craft and technician apprenticeship roles, which are to do with how to actually put the kit together. You know, you've got a lot of pipe work, a lot of pressure vessels, instrumentation, and it takes a significant amount of skill in things like pipe fitting or rigging or welding to actually make an engineering construction facility work in the first place, and then to look after it through its life. A lot of these roles you can come into at level 3. So, you know, a level 3 apprenticeship, which is a typical entry point, but there are also higher level apprenticeships if that's something that interests you, particularly around some of the engineering disciplines. You know, there are increasingly apprenticeship routes into those sort of areas, so engineering or project management or project control, or even design and drafting, if you're looking at those sorts of areas rather than coming in at a level 3 apprenticeship, if you want to come in on a degree apprenticeship route. And that's something that's a more recent innovation in the apprenticeship landscape, obviously, but it's something that particularly the big engineering contractors are starting to look at more and more. So that gives you a sense of the real range and spectrum of the sort of roles that you might get involved in. And a lot of these facilities will be in the UK, but also particularly the design houses who are doing the front end of projects. They might be designing for a project that's taking place overseas as well. If you think there are particularly oil and gas and chemical projects happening all around the world, and a lot of the design work and the management work and the costing work for those is done in the UK. So that's all very, you know, dry and theoretical, but this just gives you a bit more of a feel for engineering constructors at work in various different disciplines. And you can see there's a whole range from, you know, the office-based design and project management roles. You'll also have management roles out on site. But then a lot of the roles will take place in the actual engineering construction environment itself. So the processing site where the facility is going to live and all the equipment is installed. So it just gives you a feel And different people are looking for different things. You know, you might want to be office-based, that's fine, that's an option within engineering construction, but you might want the variety and the hands-on interest of actually working on a site, and that could either be a site, you know, a land-based site like a food and drink processing facility or a water treatment plant, but it might be offshore, you know, offshore oil and gas platform or a wind turbine increasingly. So there's a real mixture. The engineering skills in all these environments are pretty much the same. That's the beauty of engineering as a discipline. I'm an engineer, and I started out in aerospace and defence. That's my background. But engineering is engineering wherever you apply it. So you've got that flexibility and the ability to adapt what you do to a different setting and a different domain, a different industry. And that's why, although we've got this big variety of settings, the things that people do on those settings are essentially the same. You know, they're just in a different specialised domain. So I think engineers are the master problem solvers, and really they're very good at adapting their skills to new situations. One of the things that Matt mentioned at the beginning was all about energy transition and net zero. You know, climate change is a huge issue, and this affects engineering construction as much as any other industry. And you've probably realised from the sort of sectors that we described at the beginning, a lot of these sectors are heat intensive, they're energy intensive, they might be to do with fossil fuels. And you think, okay, well, what's that got to do with you know, isn't that anathema to climate change and the energy transition to net zero? Well, actually not. These are all really important elements of our national infrastructure and the things that we need to live currently. We may find new solutions in the future, but at the moment these are key parts of our national infrastructure. So in order to transition to net zero as a country, it's really important that decarbonisation happens in all these sectors. So that means looking at how do we use carbon capture, how do we use hydrogen production and perhaps as an alternative to methane as a fuel source. In some of these settings, you take steel processing or cement processing, things like that, where it's very heat intensive. And decarbonising these industrial areas, which are all key engineering construction hot points, is really important. So again, that's part of the engineering mindset, you know, solving that problem. So you can be part of a sector that you think isn't obviously part of the energy transition, but it is a really fundamental part of us reaching net zero. But this just gives you an idea of the spread. And it's worth saying that, you know, as the UK looks at carbon capture and looks at hydrogen production, those are all processing facilities that are going to be created. And again, engineering and construction is involved in the creation of those. One of the things that we are looking at as an industry is, you know, the makeup of the industry and how important it is that we are inclusive of all elements of society that might want to come into engineering. You know, I said I'm an engineer. I personally believe that the opportunities that engineering gives you, regardless of which sector you work in, are huge. You know, there's good earning potential. There's real creative. There's a real creative discipline that you can take part of. You can feel like you're involved in solving problems and helping to come up with solutions, and then you can see those solutions at work in the real world. So there's so many pluses to being part of the engineering sector, and I think it's really important that those opportunities are open to everyone. It's fair to say that at the moment, engineering construction is male-dominated, like a lot of engineering fields. It's also quite white-dominated, but there is a huge push to make sure that the environments that we have are inclusive to anyone that wants to be part of them, because I think that's, you know, there's a real social fairness aspect to engineering that has to be addressed, and we, as much as any other part of engineering, are looking at that. So there's no reason why anybody that's got an interest in this sort of profession can't take part in it. Just to put some human faces to the theoretical talk, I just wanted to give you an idea of a couple of people that are taking part in these sorts of entry pathways at the moment. So on the right there, you've got Jack, who's one of our apprentice welders, who's just finished his training. And it's worth saying that welding is a really in-demand occupation. We did a fantastic roundtable last week as part of International Women Engineering Day with a lady called, you might have seen her on TikTok, called Chloe the Welder, who is one of the rare female welders, but just the passion that she has for the profession that she's found and chosen is quite inspiring. You ought to look her up on TikTok. Hanny on the left here, she is going through a training program, which is one of our scholarship programs, which is like the first 2 years of an apprenticeship, which she's undertaking at Richmond upon Thames College, and she's looking at design and drafting as an apprenticeship. So she's going into the design field, probably with one of the large contractors eventually, like Fleur or Jacobs or Fleur or Worley or Wood, who operate around the M3, M4 corridor in the west of London. So there are different routes in. There's apprenticeships at various levels. There's a scholarship that we run. It was something that we started during COVID because employers found it so hard to take apprentices on in a lot of the environments we're talking about. So this is where scholars are supported in full-time education for 2 years and then go into an accelerated apprenticeship. But that just gives you a feel for a couple of people that are going through these routes at the moment.
So we're at stand 44, which is if you walk in a straight line for about 30 seconds that way. We're there all day. If anyone's got any immediate questions, we'll try and answer them. Otherwise, head down and see us.